Good morning. My name is Christine Jenkins. I'm pretty much going to give the rundown of my thoughts on education and how important it is. As I just mentioned, my name is Christine Jenkins. I have a 9-year-old son. His name is Isaiah. I'm a single parent. I have been active with his education since he started pre-K. Um, been very active with the school, very familiar with things not always being so fair within the school system, especially when it comes to little black boys. I am a recent college graduate. I have my master's degree, and I managed to obtain a 4.0 throughout my whole master's program.
Okay, when you say not being the school district not being fair, can you give us some examples?
Sure, I can. A lot of times I've often seen that little black boys tend to get a harsher treatment than any other race within the school, particularly little white boys. Um, I can give you a perfect example. We can say we have a little white boy that is not doing what he's supposed to be doing. Let's just say he's just up in the classroom disturbing other children versus the little black boy pretty much doing the same thing, but the treatment is a little bit harsher on the little black boy. It just seems that the little white boy pretty much gets the slap on the wrist. Um, you know, don't do it again. While the little black boy tends to get the phone call home, the in school suspension or the out of school suspension, and then he's put off in a corner to learn by himself. So I would often see things and, just hear different cases. And with me, like I said, being involved, I definitely want to keep on top of that, regarding myself.
So, what kind of experiences did your son go through, if any, in regards to that or anything else?
Oh, he's been labeled retarded. He's been labeled as the, how can we say it? Maybe the child with the behavior problem. Um, he himself has been put off into a corner where he's been learning, by himself. And so little things like that, I would witness, but in the same sense, I would always talk about it as well. I don't know if you or any of your viewers or people you talk to in general are aware of Dr. Umar Johnson. I have been in contact with him about several times, and he is so awesome. I love his work. I praise his studies, and I've actually been following some tips. And because of the tips that he gives, I was pretty much able to use that into cooperation with my son's style of learning. And you pretty much have to be firm. You pretty much have to know when you are going up to these schools to talk to the principal or whatever it is, you have to be able to tell it like it is. That's just what that is.
What specific tips did you follow?
I followed up on maybe behavior studies. I would just, do random pop ups. And a lot of times, what I find that when the teachers like to give feedback, a lot of times they exaggerate. They kind of go overboard with the exaggeration. So, I would kind of walk in and see certain things for myself, but it's like, you're pretty much giving me the opposite of what you're saying that my son is doing. I see him in the classroom functioning, doing his work, and actually, there's been a few cases where I would walk in and he's been done with his work way ahead of time. But yet, stories would come back to me as if, he's just, this out of control child and he can't be controlled. So, we're going to have to do this with him or we're going to have to do that.
So, is he labeled as a special education student, or were he just labeled just as retarded?
They tried to want to push him into special ed. And that for me was pretty much my breaking point. They have all these IEPs and, all this testing that they wanted to do. So at one point, I allowed them, to test my child. But of course, when the results came back, he's very much capable of being uh, to function, within a regular or general ed class, so to speak. So there were no findings of or indications, that he needed to be placed into special ed.
What did you go from there? Did the teacher keep calling about his behavior, or
What
did
I
everything?
did was I actually ended up changing the school because once you are a target, or once your child is pretty much labeled as a target, it's not going to get better. Teachers are going to talk. The target is going to pretty much stick with you. I've been through things where he would come home with bad grades on his report card. And I like to tell my parents, do not spend the whole school year wanting to argue with the teachers because the teachers technically hold no power. You have to go to the main source. You have to go to the head. You have to address whatever kind of issues that may be going on. You have to address it head on with the principal. So when I saw that he was getting like twos and in computers and gym and art, who fails gym? What active child fails gym? Nobody fails gym. Nobody fails computer. So I took the report card to the principal and I did let her know this is a criminal act. And I let her know it was a criminal act and an act of negligence because the teachers, with me being involved the way that I am with my son's education, they know me. There was no phone call home. There was no parent teacher meeting. There was none of that of any sort. So in the meeting, I had to explain to her. I said, "This is an act of negligence. Nobody decided they was going to reach out, but they didn't like the fact that I was pretty much on to what they were doing at that point. So in any kind of way, they were able to take it out on my child. That's what they did. Later on that day in the afternoon, I got a phone call from his teacher explaining to me that he was coming home with a different report card. And when he came home, his report card had changed. And it changed because I was bold enough to speak up. At the end of the day, when our children are going on and moving and propelling forward into higher grades, you're always going to have someone or a group of people to look at their grades, the conduct, and things of that nature. So when these people look back at it, it's like, okay, well, maybe he's just a little wise guy. And again, it creates the stereotype and it creates the stigma, and it's hard to break.
How is your son doing at this new school? Like after you transferred him?
No, he's excelling. He's always had amazing grades. He's always been above and beyond. But when it came to um, certain teachers, in particular, wanting to complain, that's when I started to see the grades drop. Phone calls were coming frequent, but I mean now he's 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 doing very well. He's doing very well.
So, what advice would you offer fellow parents who has a son who was kind of in your situation to where he ultimately becomes a target because teachers talk in the break rooms and
Right,
teachers lounge, becomes a
right,
target, but
right.
he's smart enough to do the work, but they want to put him in special ed. Do you think that parents should let their kids be tested or continue to fight for them to
You
not be
have
in
to
special?
continue. You have to continue to fight because at the end of the day, the teachers are there to teach. Nobody has certification or degrees to be Dr. Phil. Nobody does. At the end of the day, the parent knows their child. You know your child better than anybody else. So the type of advice that I would offer is to always stay on top. Make sure you keep copies of any kind of letters or anything that comes home from the school because a lot of times what happens with the school system is whenever they choose to contact you, they want to be very formal about it. And I tell parents all the time that it's very important that they are formal as well. So if you're going to send any kind of letters or anything like that, make sure you keep a copy of it, for your records. Because what'll happen is in the end, if you have to go to any kind of school board, or if you have to go to a level higher than speaking with the principal, they're going to want proof. And it's easy for the schools to say, they may have the proof, but nothing was brought forward. But if you have your papers in order, you can say, on such and such date, I spoke with, the general ed teacher, and I spoke with this teacher, I spoke with this teacher, and I also had conversations with the principal. All of your documents are there to pretty much back you up, with your statement. So I would say always be formal with the school. I would say do pop up visits. Always know what's going on with the child. Talk to your children. You should want to know how they're feeling, as far as disengagements in the classroom with other children. That's very important. But you also want to know the importance of the relationship with the teacher. The teacher and student relationship is very important. So I would say be mindful of always wanting to follow up. Um, Keep tabs and keep any kind of documents that you can. If you have to get a copy of it, that's fine too. But always keep any kind of paper or any kind of documents, or even if you have to have a journal, just jot it down. That works wonders as well.
What do you think made the teacher change the grades?
I think what made the teacher change the grades. Um, Number one, I didn't go to the teacher about it. I went straight to the principal about it. And what happens typically in situations like this is you normally get a friction that happens between the parent and the teacher. You can't, as I said earlier, you can't spend all year arguing with the teacher. You're going to have to take it to the source. Because at the end of the day, the teacher is still going to be there. The teacher is still going to be liable for teaching. You have to take it to the head. So any kind of questions, comments, and concerns that I had when I felt like I wasn't getting a breakthrough with the teacher, that's what I did. That was my next step. I challenged that. And being that I'm very familiar with how things go, or things that I really wasn't comfortable with, um, of course, it brought me to my own concerns as a parent. And I just pretty much made the conscious decision that I was going to go forward with speaking to the principal. And a lot of times, what happens is it's not just our little black boys that get this false negative stigma. Um, when you get a lot of black parents in general, a lot of mothers, we want to say, a lot of times we are looked at as unstable, and we are the women that'll come up into the school system, raised in hell, and we're going to have the bad attitude. But I was actually the opposite. So when you know how to conduct yourself and you go about things cordial, number one, it's really not expected because it doesn't happen often. And when you, like I said, when you know how to conduct yourself and you're very cordial, you're a threat. You're a threat. And when you know how to speak, you are a threat. So that was pretty much why those grades changed the way that they did. If not, I was going to earn my some time on Oprah couch somewhere, because I was definitely going to be willing to speak up about it.
What when you say being cordial, can you kind of expound on that and let parents know the tone you use, some of the words you use, and phrases?
Sure, there are different phrases and different affirmations that you have to use when you are conducting yourself in a meeting, whether it be with the principal or whether it be with the teacher. What you want to do is generate some simple questions. Um, and these are some things the parents can even go to different websites online. They even have different parent sheets and things of that nature. But in general, you can jot down maybe about 4 or 5 questions that you may want to ask the teacher. You definitely want to ask the teacher, what is the relationship? with you and my son? What is that teacher student relationship like? How does my son learn? If the teacher, he or she, has a hard time with wanting to explain or expound on that, there's a problem. They should be able to tell you what their relationship is with your child, number one, and how they function. Your children are around them 24/7 once they step into the school building. They are around them. They get to adapt to know what their likes are and what their dislikes are. So for me, I would have a problem with that. If you're not able to answer that question, the next step I would suggest for the parent to do is to further expound on that and really pound in on that. So you have to be careful at how you choose to use your words because it can come back to bite you and not necessarily you on your child. You don't want for the friction to be a consistent issue with the teacher and the student. You don't want for that negative trouble to be there because a lot of times what happens is the child is going to feed off of that. So once the child knows that either, okay, well, I'm being singled out or, I know I'm not being treated fairly, it's going to typically cause for them to act out. And of course, the teacher is going to play on that. So you have to kind of be careful in the way that, you handle things and the way you say things. You don't want to do it in a way that you are going to be abrupt about it, where it's going to cause for you to just totally lose it and get out of character. Because at the end of the day, that's what they expect and that's what they want. And you don't want to give them that. And another thing that I would say with parents is to speak to people of your peers, speak to people of your surroundings, ask questions, see what their experiences are like within different classrooms, if they happen to be in the same school or not. Just talk. And if it's a way that they can get together to do like different support groups, that also helps as well.